and welcome to this edition of Inside Tacoma. I'm your host, Randall Lewis. Our guest for our conversation today, Tacoma School Board President Andrea Cobb. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
This is your first time with us on this show.
Yeah, I'll try not to mess it up.
Okay, good. Well, we like to have the school district's board president on periodically to find out what's going on, because there's seems to be a lot going on in the Tacoma School District.
Yeah.
And first of all, here we are in late March, and you just had another kind of successful response from the community about, yeah, we think you're doing right, and here's some extra money.
Yeah, that was great. We've got a lot of good momentum in the district. We've got several years of working to implement our strategic plan. We've started to figure out, I think, what works for students and what partnerships we need to grow, what programs need to be scaled, what initiatives need to be tweaked. So it's really exciting that we have some stability in funding and the support from the community to keep moving some of that work forward. So it was really great to see where we were in the end, because it's always reassuring to know that your community is behind you.
And it generally has been, even when the graduation rate wasn't like it is now. I mean, the community has never kind of given up on the school district. Things we see in other places across the state and across the nation hasn't really happened here. Tacoma's always felt really strongly about its schools.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, but I think it's a reflection of just this community and the way we are about major issues generally. I grew up here, so I've always felt like a sense of community. So I think that the district has been successful in communicating that we're committed, we care, we want to keep moving forward, and I think that it's obviously reflected in what the community sees and feels, because they've continued to support the work of the district.
Right. Now, you are the youngest member of the school board.
I think so.
Okay, all right. But you're no longer the newest member of the school board, right? Even though you were just elected 3 years ago, because board member Catherine Ushka has moved on to the city council, so you had a vacancy to fill.
Yeah, we did. Based on the law, we have about 90 days to fill a seat when it becomes vacant. And we were really fortunate this time around. I think we had a total of 22 community members respond to our call for applications, saying that they were interested in the position. So we ended up interviewing 5 of those applicants, and we ended up with a great new addition to the board. His name's Enrique Leon. He'll be at our next meeting, I think on March 22nd, so we're excited to have him come along. He brings a really different perspective than the rest of us have. He works in the medical fields. He's a doctor and has been in this community for over maybe 2 decades, so it's great to have that perspective on our board, because a lot of us are former public servants or have some nonprofit or other public experience, so it's great to have that different perspective.
All right. Well, what were you doing when you made the decision one day to, I think I'd like to run for the school board?
Well, in terms of work, at the point in time that I was running, I was a staff person at the Tacoma Housing Authority. I was working there to help implement some of THA's partnership programs between Tacoma School District and Tacoma Housing Authority. Before that, I had worked, though, at the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, so our state's education agency, as a policy analyst and doing a lot of work on K-12 basic education funding. And before that, I had worked in higher education with students who were transitioning to college. So I've always worked in or around K-12 or higher ed, and it's just making sure that kids have opportunities to succeed in their futures because they have a strong educational foundation has always been my passion. So it was I felt like it was the right time for me to run.
All right, but there has to be isn't there something extra? I mean, being interested in schools is one thing, but running for office is, okay, no, I'm going to do that extra, take that extra step, put myself out there, knock on people's doors.
I guess at the point in time that I made the decision to run, and having been at Tacoma Housing Authority, I was ever since I returned home to Tacoma from undergraduate, I'd been in positions where I was working down in Olympia or traveling up to Seattle. So I didn't have the opportunity to really root in the community in terms of work here in education. So working at THA, I was in a place where I had really gotten to see a lot of, firsthand, the work that the Foundation for Tacoma Students was doing, the work that another great organization, Degrees of Change, was doing with students, the work that several of our individual high schools and other community organizations were doing in education in Tacoma. And then working from the community side of it, I got to see how meaningful it was for their work, for the district to have the strategic plan in place that it had, to have the commitment to partnerships. So at the point when the time to decide if you were going to run was coming around, that was going to be an open seat. And given what I had seen, I just didn't know who would be there filling that seat. So I think it was the right time for me because I just knew that I wanted to make sure that somebody was there helping to keep that momentum moving forward. So I guess it was probably where I was sitting in terms of work that made me see it as the right time because I knew so much good stuff was happening. I just wanted to be a part of keeping that moving forward.
All right. Well, there certainly has been a lot of stuff happening in the Tacoma School District, and we'll get to some of that. But education as a whole is some conversation that we have at the state level because of the ongoing struggles the legislature's had with its obligations to fully fund public education as the state's paramount duty. And then nationally, while there's less of a role for the federal government in education, there's always controversy at the national level about education. Either an administration thinks it's doing the wrong things or the right things or too much or too little. And then there's the societal questions. And so I want to get to one of those because everybody's talking about right now, and that is school safety. And I know that's something that board members spend way more time on than they probably think they want to, because it should just be for granted that schools are safe places. But that's not the way it is in our country. So where does the Tacoma School District think it needs to adjust to deal with school safety? What are the policies or practices the school board's looking at on that?
Well, I think from a board perspective, ongoing, we have a focus on safety. One of our 4 main strategic plan goals is safety. So it's been something that's top in terms of our priorities. It's been a top priority for a long time. But just in reaction to the most recent incidents in Florida, many of us board members were wanting to get a better handle on what does our safety infrastructure look like across the district and across all buildings. That's kind of a conversation we need to have internally to some extent, because some of that infrastructure question, keeping that information secret is a matter of protecting students and safety. Our superintendent has been in ongoing conversations with the police chief, making sure that we're aligned and have protocols in place for communication in response to any incidents that are occurring. I think broadly we're looking at safety holistically from the standpoint of physical infrastructure, from the standpoint of continuing to move our whole child initiative forward, which really focuses on how you treat people in the buildings, both how students treat one another, how faculty engage with students, and creating a safe culture, and then also making sure that we develop a culture of safety. So keeping an eye on who's in the building and are they supposed to be there? How do we greet people when they come to the building so we know that they've checked in with the office and are supposed to be there? So I think what we're doing now is really making sure that we are shored up in the places in terms of infrastructure, communication protocols, but then continuing to move all of our work forward to create more broadly a safe and supportive culture and climate that I really think at the foundation helps to prevent incidents like this from occurring in the future. So we're addressing it from all sides.
And it certainly does seem to be something that if you just focus internally and institutionally about our buildings, that, okay, that's an important element, but you're missing something because then you don't really know what's going on in the community. The police department, we like to believe, has its pulse on what's going on in the community and what the activities are. And so you figured out that there is a link there. There's a link with other community agencies that may know about things that are happening. And so it really does kind of seem to me that a holistic approach is really the way to go, and districts cannot just say, no, this is our thing to worry about. We don't know, we don't want to care what you guys are doing.
Absolutely not. We have to be engaged with our partners on this. I think one important partner community too is just families in our district. Families see changes in their students faster than maybe a teacher might notice it. So the stronger partnerships we have with that group of our constituents too, I think the better off we'll be. So again, that holistic approach is, I think, how we address all of these complex major issues, and I think that's the approach that we're taking with regard to safety.
Okay. Another kind of more societal issue that I know affects schools is something that the city also is very heavily engaged in, and that is the growing number of homeless folks we have in our community, which is a variety of causes for that and a variety of ways to be addressed. Tacoma certainly, I believe, as a community, as a city, as the schools, is doing probably more than its share in terms of addressing this issue. There's not as much going on in other agencies around us, but it has a direct effect on you guys, because homeless families still, who have children, still send their kids to school. Yep. And so I'd heard a number that seemed surprisingly large about how many homeless students the Tacoma School District has. It was like 1,300.
I think it might even be a little more than that. I don't have that number right in the top of my head. Yeah. Okay, so
do those students present an additional burden on the district in terms of providing a service, or I mean, are things that need to be addressed for them that aren't addressed for students who come from a more stable home?
I wouldn't say that the students create a burden on the district at all. I think that from our perspective, given that students are experiencing so much transition in their lives, what we can do is to make sure that school is a point of stability for them. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that the federal government doesn't have a huge role in what we see locally in education, but I think with regard to students who are experiencing homelessness, the Federal McKinney-Vento Act sets out these basic protections and basic rights that students have around continuing to access education and supportive services when they are going through those periods of experiencing homelessness. So I think what our staff who work in the district office and who are building liaisons for students impacted in this way, they're really trying to make sure that there's a stability for kids. So whether that means transportation to the school that they were attending when the family needs to move somewhere, whether it's access to like AP test fee waivers or other supports that students need to access all the benefits of their education, whether it's just some change of clothes, whatever it takes. I think our perspective is that the more that we can do at our schools to make sure that students feel like it is a place of safety and security and stability, the better chance they have at managing through that experience of homelessness successfully and continuing on in their pathway towards graduation or post-secondary education or whatever is in their future for them. But we want school to be a place that's supportive and stable during those periods of instability.
All right, I think that's a fair answer. And so let's talk about some local things now. Amazing for a person who's of my age and going through Tacoma Public Schools and graduating from Mount Tacoma. It was clearly the era where comprehensive high schools were the thing. It's basically all you offered was 5 comprehensive high schools back then. Now it seems like every year there's something new, some new approach to that. We still have the 5 comprehensive high schools, but we have so much more, and a couple of them opened in the last year. So I want to focus on one. Let's start out in the South End with IDEA. Okay, tell us about IDEA.
IDEA. Well, just generally, I know you asked me specifically about IDEA, but generally, I think these innovative schools are great. I think that the more we get to know about our students and their specific needs and areas where we want to dig in deep, these innovative schools ideas pop up. So IDEA and industrial design, engineering, and art or architecture, I think the premise of it and getting students access to more hands-on learning and across the innovative schools broadly, that hands-on learning experience, that bringing in professionals who are working in this field to teach our students the fact that it's a smaller community where they're building a different kind of relationships with their peers and the adults they're interacting with, I think it's just an extension of this innovative school model in another area where we see that students are interested, and pursuing those interests provides them access to a great deal of opportunities when they leave Tacoma School District. So I haven't had a chance to go visit IDEA personally, but I have talked to some parents. Actually, at the opening of one of our other innovative schools, Sammy, I've talked to some parents whose kids are attending IDEA who just feel like it has awakened their students in a different way. They're excited to go to school to pursue something that they have some passion around right now. It might not be what they end up majoring in college or what they pursue for a career down the road, but it's the thing that's keeping them engaged right now. And I think broadly, these innovative schools have had that impact of keeping kids really engaged.
Now, it started in Tacoma with, well, there's been Oakland Alternative High School, which is a different approach to the comprehensive high school. That's been around for years. But SOTA was originally the first innovative school and proved, I think the school district and the community at large was just stunned by how widely and easily that was accepted and how fast it grew. And that kind of led to Sammy after, and now IDEA later. And now Sammy has reached a milestone in having, for the first time, not just living out of portables, right? So they have their own really cool building in the zoo.
Yeah, that's exciting. I did have a chance to be at the Sammy grand opening, and it really is, you can feel the partnership that it took to execute that building. And students were there and very proud of their new facility, excited about the possibilities and what that connection to the zoo kind of provides them with regard to their day-to-day experience. So it really felt like a place where there will be strong connections between the zoo staff and volunteers, and just that ongoing focus on environmental education and learning. So I'm excited for the students at Sammy. And as there were some young students in the building too, maybe elementary or middle school age, who were obviously their interest was piqued by walking around. So it's just a neat representation of what an IDEA, partners at the table coming together to think through how to make it happen, and execution can look like in our city.
Right, and I love the bridge into the woods.
Me too.
Right out of the school deep into the woods.
It really is kind of magical. I was fortunate to go to undergrad at a place that had like a little stream that ran through the campus. And it really, when you're out on the campus and the sun's shining or it's raining, and just having that be your view around you just changes how you feel. I think it, at least for me, being in the park, the trees put me a little bit at ease. So just the fact that students for whom that's a right fit have access to a place like that as their day-to-day center of learning is just really exciting to me.
Okay, now SOTA, while it's been around the longest, doesn't actually have a building of its own. It kind of operates out of various spaces in downtown Tacoma. Is that the model that you're looking forward for that, or is there a building for SOTA in the future?
You know, in my time, we haven't talked about a different building for SOTA in the future. And I think the way that things are structured right now, I mean, I haven't seen any survey results, but I think it works for students. The school has built a culture around that being its physical space setup, and have created policies and procedures and a way of moving for students that they know and is familiar at this point. I don't know that it's the ideal model that we'd like to replicate down the road, but I think that it works for SOTA.
I think it also works because of its urban setting.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to other folks, more the city planners, the city builders, the city thinkers, kind of people, and they love the activity, the vibe that. College kids are one thing that UW Tacoma provides, but high school kids are just a completely different vibe. And mixing them all kind of together down there in that part of downtown is why that part of downtown is alive like it is.
Yeah, I think it works with the SOTA students moving around. I think it works with the UWT group. It works with the transit that's right there, because many of the students don't have a car or aren't yet driving age. So having them have access to public transit really easily makes it work. I think that would be a challenge. if the transit wasn't there, having some access to food makes it work. So there are a number of elements that I think just make it all come together right downtown.
Okay. And then IDEA is located at the old Park Avenue School.
Yep.
So it's kind of making use of an old building that had been closed down, and reusing it. Though it's kind of interesting because it was an elementary school, so I imagine the drinking fountains are way down here, and the restrooms are way down there. All that had to be fixed, I assume, for high school kids.
Yeah, to get ready for IDEA, there were a number of modifications that had to be made to the building, but they did have to make some transitions from the space that it was to the space that it needed to be.
Okay, and is that a long-term solution, you think, or is there discussion about some kind of a facility for them?
No, not at this point. I think Park Avenue is working for IDEA, and we can continue to make some changes as time goes on and there are different needs identified, but I think as we get started, it's working.
Okay, so that's three. Within for an institution as old as the Tacoma School District, 3 brand new high schools in a short period of time, given that how long it took to get to 5 comprehensive high schools. Is that it, or are there other? Will you just respond to new ideas come along, or new opportunities, or do you think the 5 comprehensives and the 3 alternative schools are really the kind of the best mix for Tacoma?
I think we have to continue to. I mean, this is the word for the morning, think holistically. We have had another innovative program launch. It's sort of a program within a school at Jason Lee Middle School, the Thrive Academy. Oh. So that is another neat innovation, but at the middle school level. But I think as we think forward about our plans for schools, we have to consider enrollment and working with our demographers to understand where there will be growth and change. We have plans to open Hunt back up in the next couple of years, so hopefully that will mean a different enrollment pattern going up to FOSS, and so we'll have to think about what FOSS looks like when Hunt reopens. So I think we're probably in a place where of holding and waiting just to see how things shape up, but we have a lot of good opportunities, I think, for students to find the right fit, and with students exercising some of that choice and moving around, create spaces for kids who aren't necessarily in that neighborhood to go where they want to go. So I think there's enough flexibility in the district right now for us to just wait, and if the time is right, we have a process for putting out an RFP for ideas for innovative schools, and we can evaluate them at the time. But I think we're in a really good spot for students with regard to the amount of choice they have to find the right fit.
Okay, now one thing we talked about before we began taping that I want to cover here, because we talk about a lot of this stuff at the high school level. We've talked about some impacts on elementary, but middle school. There was a major policy change a few years ago there was some controversy about it in the community about restoring sports to middle schools. Now, I'm of the era when there was sports at the middle schools. My daughters were at the era when there wasn't. And I think that was the right call by the school district to put it back, because I think that's an awkward age for any student. I wholeheartedly agree. And they need these opportunities. Mm-hmm.
I wholeheartly agree that was a good move to restore to middle school sports. I was a student who came through Tacoma Public Schools at a point when I think middle school sports transitioned out after my 6th grade year. So I didn't experience the opportunity to play on my Baker Middle School team against the Galt team. I didn't have that experience then, and I feel like I missed something. I was a very shy child, I was introverted, but I'm sure my mom would have pushed me to play on some school team. So I think it's a great opportunity that students have. It forces them to get out, be physically active, not forces. It provides them an opportunity to be physically active, meet their peers at school in a different way, start to build connections to students at other middle schools who may be students that they're attending high school with. So I think it just furthers kind of our overall goal of building community in the district and provides kids with an opportunity to engage in a different way than just what they're doing during the school day.
Right. I always thought, like, as I said, it's an awkward age for kids going into puberty at different ages and figuring out who they are and what their bodies are changing so much. And just having more opportunities is actually more important, I think, that age than even at high school, where they've sometimes they've settled on what it is they're interested in and what they want to do at that point.
I think middle school there are so many opportunities to be creative with middle school, and the more chances we can give students to find things that they're good at, I feel like the more confidence that helps them launch into high school with. So whether you struggle in math, but you're a great writer and you can kick a soccer ball, like just giving kids those chances to use their brains in different ways, use their bodies in different ways, exposure to arts in the middle school, project-based learning, first robotics, all these activities. I think the more we can introduce them at earlier stages, it helps kids keep their minds open to the possibilities for them in the future. So anything we can do to be innovative and creative at middle school, I'm all for it.
Okay, and that's kind of one of the thoughts behind the Thrive Academy, Jason Lee? Okay. We have just a minute left, but can you summarize a little bit about what that does?
Well, Thrive is a great recognition that in order for students to be engaged and to as learners, they need to be active physically. So Thrive embeds a lot of great physical education opportunities, focused on nutrition and healthy eating. Just overall health and wellness is embedded into that program. We got a great grant, I think last year or the year before, that helped the school make some improvements to its gym, and so there's great equipment there for the students to use. And it's just a great little it's a way to incubate an idea and a program before expanding it. So Christine Brandt, the principal there, is leading that effort. And from what I've heard, my niece is a student there. It's going well so far. So it's a different innovation, and it's a great way to pilot something that we can scale potentially later. And just broadly, from all of these innovative schools, even though the focus is happening in one school, it's a great way for us to learn what works and to embed them into our other schools and our comprehensive schools moving forward.
All right. Well, and with that, we are out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Our guest has been School Board President Andrea Cobb. We look forward to seeing you next time here on Inside Tacoma.